Friends, this may look like Monterey County, but it is not. If you remember, last time we went up there, we shot not one, but two Nissans. We got very excited by the Armada and a little bit excited by the half-ton pickup, but this kind of got left on the other side of the dance floor. We just didn't have time to get to it. So let's do a round-the-block review of the 2017 Nissan Pathfinder, and this one is like the super-duper fancy one, the Platinum. So while yes, this is California, at first glance, one of the biggest differences you notice is the sky. It is clear blue. Believe it or not, they are still fighting the fires up there, so our thoughts are definitely going out to all the first responders, the firemen, and the police that are dealing with it. So thank you very much for everything you're doing up there. And a special shout out goes to all the first responders that came in from all around the country to help the first responders in Monterey County. Huge thank you. So now to the business of where we're actually going to do this round-the-block review. This is Hidden Hills. You and I used to shoot here a lot in the early days of the show. Stunning roads back here, a lot of horse country. The guy who owns Dole, this is his plantation here. He used to do a beautiful concours on the land there. So the 101 is over that way, and the 405 is over that way, just over the Santa Monica Mountains. And this is just beautiful country driving roads. Perfect opportunity to drive this. Now, the last time you and I looked at the Pathfinder was in 2013 when this thing was completely new. This is what you would call a mid-cycle refresh. And yes, we could spend some time talking about some of the design changes in the front, but really that doesn't excite you and I. What excites us is mechanical changes, and there are a couple that are for us car guys and gals. The first and foremost is the engine. So this is the ubiquitous 3.5 V6 that we've seen in Nissans for years. An engine we actually like a lot. And if I'm honest, I didn't really complain about the power of the Pathfinder in 2013, so I'm kind of surprised they put more power into it. But really, they did this by changing fuel delivery and how much air gets into the engine. So the biggest change is it now has direct fuel injection. That translates to two things, and before we dive off into that, I'd like to point out horsepower as we go past here. Anyway, and the guy was actually on the phone as he's on his horse. I wonder if there's like a law or some sort of like citation he would get for that. For those of you that know about that, about horses and operating horses with a phone, let me know in the comments below. I'm very intrigued by that. Anyway, back to the two improvements. Number one, improved fuel economy, and number two, really more important for us car guys and gals, is a higher compression ratio. It goes from 10.3 to 1 up to 11 to 1, and that translates to improved horsepower and torque. So it's 284 horsepower, which comes in at a relatively high 6,000 RPM, and 260 pound-feet of torque also comes in at a relatively aggressive engine speed of 4,800 RPM. Anyway, we got a nice hill here, so let's put our foot into it, go up the hill. And again, I never thought of this thing as a slouch. So adding, what is it, 24 horsepower and just under 20 pound-feet of torque is always a nice thing. So I will definitely say thank you about this. But now let's move on to the next bit and the changes to the suspension. Now, if I'm honest, there aren't a hell of a lot of like mechanical changes. They didn't go in there and change out the struts or change the setup here. It's still very much the same. I actually spoke with an old friend, and his name's Dusty. He works out at ATC with Ryan and Mike and Gary, who you guys now love. And he was the test engineer for this vehicle. Dusty did tell me there are a number of changes in terms of how stiff it is, like it's 11% more stiff here and 7% more stiff back there. But let's put the numbers aside. Let's put our foot into it around this turn here. Again, we're not going to take this thing to a canyon. It's not designed to go to a canyon. And look at how composed it is. Like back in 2013, you go back and look at that episode, I was somewhat impressed on how composed it is, especially when you think of the size of what this vehicle is. This is a large crossover, so exterior size, think like that Mazda CX-9, but this is the real catch here. The interior volume is something like a Tahoe. So, like, okay, we got a really nice turn here. Please don't try this at home. I'm gonna brake, going into it a little bit more than I normally would. Let's take the line, and notice how composed this is. There really isn't any adjustable suspension, like the dampers don't change, but like I didn't feel like I was gonna lose my life. I didn't think the thing was gonna lean at all. As a matter of fact, there was no like squat in the back and virtually no lean. Something you don't expect in a large crossover, but you know what? we have another opportunity to try again. So let's do it. Thank you, Dusty. Here we go, Dusty. Here we go, Dusty. And once again, there was like no squat in the rear and very little lean over to that side. Granted, was I going super fast? No, but faster than what you should in a vehicle like this. Anyway, we're kind of getting back into suburbia here, which gets us back into the business end of what this thing is really designed for, and that is hauling you, your wife, and the Rugrats, or you, your husband, and the Rugrats. No matter how you slice it, there are some changes we do need to cover on the inside. They are mainly color and trim, with the exception of one like design thing down here. If you are like an eagle eye at spotting changes in Pathfinders, you probably noticed the faux wood here. Not mad at it. Probably a nice touch. I don't know if I would go with this on a Pathfinder. You know how I feel about dark color interiors, especially with this beautiful red on the outside. Definitely would like to see like a saddle, a tan, a gray, something more contrast, because this black is just blah, but you can actually fix that. They do give you different color options in here. I do want to bring something up here, which is not new. So this unified controller, which is in all Infinitis and most Nissans, this was invented by a guy by the name of Taro. Taro now runs Nissan Design America, great guy, and I think he is a genius designer. And let me tell you why. He designed this very unique, I want to say 5 to 6-way controller, because you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then this scroll thing here, and then they added it, they updated recently by putting in this like smart button control wheel thing here. But here's the genius of Taro. Notice, everything has a redundant button. So I'm in navigation. Let's say for the sake of discussion, I want to go to settings. I don't need to fiddle with this thing here. And yes, they've changed the UX in here. They've mimicked, obviously, Android and iOS, which every manufacturer is doing. And just as an aside here, Nissan has said that they are going to support CarPlay and Android Auto, but no real dates. I haven't heard when they're going to do this. I would love to see a real update on this, because now it's kind of behind the pack. Like even General Motors, every one of their cars now have Apple CarPlay and/or Android Auto, and many others. So Volvo's got it. We've played around in most Volkswagens, Mercedes. Good, bad, or indifferent, most have it. I'd like to see it here. But anyway, back to the genius of Taro. Even the radio, it has a regular volume controller, which, again, if you're controlling a large, any size vehicle, I think for safety, you shouldn't be forced to fool around with some unified controller, which, hey, some people might want to. I personally don't. I think it's safer to have just dedicated buttons for this. And here, Nissan and Infiniti have been very good at duplicating efforts and putting in dedicated controls in addition to the unified controller. So bravo, Taro. And I think I'm going to, actually that rhymed, I'm going to bring him on the show because you need to meet him. I've known him for a long time. Really talented designer. Now you're probably wondering why I have yet to address the elephant in the room, and that is the transmission. Reason being, Jill, you remember her, very lovely, from Chicago, has been on the show a couple of times. But recently in the Kia episode, as well as after the Kia episode, she took the opportunity to very eloquently point out that I perhaps do not represent the entire car buying public. And to this, I say to her, I agree. That explains why I prize cars that are built in the southeast of England in a shed and are fitted with only manual transmissions. And really, that's where we get into the CVT. You see, the CVT has very specific targets, namely fuel efficiency, packaging, and cost. Now, even me, someone who will only drive a manual transmission to my last days on this planet, I can admit that there are two very good automatic transmissions out there. They are called a PDK and a DSG. Both come from Germany. Now, as great as they are for driving dynamics, they have two inherent disadvantages. Number one, complexity, and number two, cost, which drive a third issue of packaging. And that's exactly the benefit of a CVT. So in a car like this, where it is designed for families, it is designed for people who just want a large vehicle that can efficiently transport their stuff, their Rugrats, their animals, with some fuel economy. That's where a CVT actually works. Because here's an instance where I've driven the 2013, forget about this direct injected model. I spent a lot of time in a 2013 and did like 20 mpg overall, especially when you think about what we said before, that the interior volume is that of like a Tahoe. So that is a huge benefit of a CVT. Now back to the other side of the argument where I just prize driving dynamics. And in the past, like in the Hyundai episodes, I always give you this spectrum of where I put like the Mazda 3 and like the Ford Focus up here on driving dynamics and the Hyundais down here. And the CVT would be the same thing. In the pantheon of automatic transmissions, I would put the PDK and the DSG, really the PDK first, way up here, and that Ferrari F1 probably above all of those things. But then I would put the CVT way down here in terms of driving dynamics. But it pains me to admit this, the truth is it's not designed for driving dynamics like I prize. So I'm trying to be as objective, because Jill kind of beat me up on this, I'm trying to be as objective to you guys as possible, and here's where I want to bring something important up and turn it around to you guys. So here I have admitted that the CVT, while not for me, has advantages and it has shortcomings. But I need to turn it around to you guys and ask those of you that own a vehicle with a CVT, are looking to buy a vehicle with a CVT, or have had significant experience with a vehicle with a CVT. What I want to know is really three things. Number one, did you buy the vehicle because of the CVT? Number two, how has your experience gone? Like driving dynamics, fuel economy, that kind of stuff. And number three, and this is kind of the most important to me, how has it been from like a reliability standpoint? Like I want to know from people who've owned these things like 5 years on, like that guy that drives that Altima right there. I want to know from him or people like him, what's your experience in terms of reliability, longevity of the CVT? Let me know in the comments below or via our social media, Motoman TV all one word, Motoman TV all one word, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. With that, I want to leave you with two things. Number one, make sure you download our fancy new mobile application, which you can download for free at Apple iTunes and Google Play. Oh, and don't forget, we are live on 5, count them, 5 international airlines: Emirates, Virgin Atlantic, Virgin Australia, Virgin America, and soon American Airlines. Number two, a fun fact, actually more of a fun experience. So who follows me on Facebook? If you don't, you really should, and here's the reason why. So went to Red Bull Global Rallycross, say that fast 5 times, and we did a live stream from the VW paddock with both Tanner's car and Scott's car. And really, ever since I got to be friends with Vaughn, he really got me into drifting. So I started following Tanner and got to know Tanner. We've had Tanner on the show. He's become a friend. Anyway, I love the sport. I think it's got everything. It's got action, it's got racing, it's got elevation changes, dirt, street, rally. I mean, it's the coolest thing. Anyway, I was in the stands yesterday. I've gone there, to Los Angeles race like for the past 3 years, and yesterday in like turn 1, Tanner's trying to get away from the Civic, and then all of a sudden one of the Subarus come around the turn and the fire starts coming out, and you would have sworn it was from the brakes. Then you're like, oh my god, there is smoke billowing out of this car. A Subaru literally like blew up on the GRC circuit. Not even one full lap. So they had to like stop the race. It was a caution. Everybody reset. And then once again, they go out and Tanner just walked away from everybody. This guy, I mean, he's super, and so is Scott. Super talented guys. Anyway, they're literally going, what is it, like probably 10 laps in. And there's a Civic trying to catch up to Tanner. And, you know, God bless the guy, but he was still like 5 car lengths behind. And then the Ford, he tries to take the Joker lap. Not just the wheel, people, the wheel and the entire lower control arm assembly and the strut fly off the car on the track and start bouncing down the track. Tanner, completely unfazed, drives right past it and takes the semifinal for the Super Sport class. If that is not cool, I have no idea what is. Until I see you next time. Oh, by the way, Tanner's coming on the show again, and we're doing something very different and very cool with him. So make sure you come back for that. Until I see you with Tanner, as well as The next episode, bis später.